Go ahead, drop it on the marble." Emily Carter snapped, her voice sharper than the polished stone beneath them. In that moment, Marcus Johnson felt every inch of his 65 years press down on his shoulders. He had walked through Metropolitan Trust Bank's Midtown Manhattan lobby with the quiet confidence of a man who had built skyscrapers from broken promises. But now, standing before Emily, her tailored jacket pristine, a white glove resting on the desk beside her, he realized how fragile dignity could really be. Marcus's hand closed around his leather wallet. Inside it, his retired CEO ID card lay next to a faded photograph of his younger self helmet on surveying a construction site under a dusk sky. Memories flashed the bank loan officers who refused him at 23, the quiet nights writing grant proposals by candlelight, the day he sold his first development for a modest profit. He'd believed that success would shield him from prejudice. He was wrong. Emily flicked her gaze toward a waiting line of white-collared clients sipping espresso at a marble bar. A hush fell over the room. Phones clicked as Sophia Lee, the financial influencer, perched on a stool behind Marcus, began live streaming. "We're live at Metro Trust," her voice whispered into her phone. "Watch this." "Sir, these documents don't inspire confidence." Emily continued thrusting the ID down so it skidded across the black and white tiles with a metallic echo. The snap of that card hitting the floor felt like a verdict. Cameras recorded eyes widened the giant chandelier overhead, refracted every shameful moment in 1,000 glints. Marcus bent slowly, controlled. He didn't want to give Emily the satisfaction of seeing him stagger. He retrieved the card fingertips, brushing cold tile, and rose with steadiness that belied the storm inside. His brown eyes locked onto hers, revealing years of endurance beneath a weathered brow. He wore a dark Hugo Boss suit, his only one since retirement, because today mattered more than money or image. Around them, the tension tightened. A junior associate peeked from behind a pillar, clutching a latte as if to shield himself. Derek Nguyen, a quietly observant customer service rep in the corner, discreetly snapped a photo, already forwarding it to an internal group chat called "Jia High Standards Exposed." Voices in the lobby hushed and swelled with silent judgment. Marcus realized he was witnessing more than personal humiliation. This was the raw anatomy of systemic bias, exposed in bright fluorescent light. He stepped away, his polished shoes clicking on the tile in deliberate rhythm, reaching for his phone. Every second counted. He tapped out 2 words on Signal to his daughter, Layla Now. No fuss, no fury, just the quiet resolve of a man who understood that true power doesn't roar. It waits for the perfect moment to strike. Outside, the summer sun bore down on 42nd Street as helicopters buzzed overhead, capturing Manhattan's pulse. But inside the bank, time slowed to the falling of a single ID card, an emblem of identity, respect, and the thin line between privilege and prejudice. And as Emily watched Marcus's retreating back with a contemptuous curl of her lip, she had no inkling that those very eyes held the blueprint for her downfall. Sophia Lee's live stream feed blinked, red recording. But as Marcus exited through the revolving door, the final image framed in her shot was not his retreat. It was the cracked tile where the ID had landed forever, marking the spot where dignity and injustice collided. "Layla, do it now." Marcus's message blinked on the screen, its simplicity belying everything at stake. In the glass-walled conference room of Urban Tech's Manhattan headquarters, Layla Johnson's fingers trembled over her keyboard. Around her, watches ticked. Outside, the skyline glowed orange as dusk settled. She swallowed, recalling her father's calm resolve in the bank lobby, how he'd bent to pick up his ID without a flinch. That unbreakable dignity pulsed through her veins, now propelling her toward a decision that would change everything. Layla glanced at the live feed of Sophia Lee's stream on her laptop. The video had racked up thousands of views within minutes. Comments streamed in real time. "Respect first." "Bias exposed." "Metro Trust scandal," each one a beacon of solidarity or outrage. The symbol at the center of it all was that crushed ID card glinting beneath the bank's chandelier in slow motion thanks to Sophia's camera. It had become more than a document. It was a rallying cry against a system built on silent prejudice. She turned to the folder on the table, a thick stack of evidence, internal emails, screenshots of Emily Carter's dismissive posts, chat logs from the high-standard Slack channel alleging unsuitable clientele. The final document was Clause 17, allowing unilateral termination in the event of discriminatory practices. Layla had pored over legalese with her team for hours, ensuring not a comma would betray them. Now, with Marcus's two-word command shimmering on her phone, she felt the weight of two legacies: her father's decades of forging opportunities amid bias, and her own startup's mission to democratize finance for marginalized founders. She hit send on an email to Metropolitan Trust's Board of Directors. Subject: urgent contract cancellation notice. Attachment: statement of grounds and evidence. Before her gaze shifted to the gavel-shaped paperweight on her desk, a gift from Marcus on her last birthday, it all felt surreal. That paperweight was a reminder rules exist to be upheld, wrongs to be righted. Meanwhile, at a chic, dimly lit corner table in a downtown cafe, Derek Nguyen scrolled through the same live video. As Metro Trust's customer service rep, he'd witnessed too many microaggressions in his short tenure. But seeing his boss Emily Carter toss an elderly man's ID as if it were trash had pushed him past fear. He forwarded the clip to board members and even insiders at the bank's ethics committee. That act might cost him his job, but he believed some stones were worth overturning. Back in the boardroom, alarms chimed softly as Layla's email landed in every director's inbox. She closed her eyes, picturing Marcus's stoic face. There was risk Metro Trust was about to lose $5 billion, and if the board balked, they could drag Urban Tech into a legal quagmire. Yet she trusted her father's wisdom. Dignity was priceless. On the other side of town, Emily Carter reviewed her calendar for tomorrow's strategy meeting with Urban Tech. She paused at one entry, 10:00 a.m. Boardroom presentation. A flicker of unease crossed her features. The white glove she'd left on her desk felt suddenly heavy, a symbol of her misplaced power. She stared at her computer screen, sensing the undercurrent of rebellion she'd ignited, but ignored. Layla took a steadying breath and rose from her chair. "This is it," she whispered to herself. The chapter that began with humiliation was about to reach its tipping point, and as she gathered her documents, she knew the next morning's board meeting would echo far beyond Manhattan's skyscrapers. It would redefine respect in corporate America. "If we pull the plug, half our shareholders will sue," boomed Arthur Caldwell, the board chair, as Marcus Johnson strode into the mahogany-paneled room. In that instant, Marcus felt the gravity of every choice he'd made converge on him like a freight train. Only hours ago, he had been the humbled guest in Metropolitan Trust's lobby. Now he stood as the architect of its potential undoing. His heart pounded, but his voice remained calm. "Then perhaps it's time we ask whose reputation we value more, ours or their dignity." The directors exchanged uneasy glances. Outside, the city's hum was muted by the double-paned windows. Inside, tension crackled like static. Layla sat at the head of the table. Her laptop open to Sophia Lee's viral stream, paused on the frozen image of Emily Carter's white glove hovering above Marcus's fallen ID card. That image had become the indictment, the symbol of systemic contempt, and tonight it had already made front-page headlines in the Financial Times online edition. As a young black CEO, Layla felt the weight of history in every staccato breath. Marcus unclasped his suit jacket and laid out a portfolio of evidence-internal Slack transcripts from the Marsh High Standards channel, referring to non-white clients as unworthy Emily Carter's personal notes, describing Marcus as unfiltered risk, and a detailed timeline of the contract negotiation framed by the hashtag campaign. He placed a single white glove soiled from his morning walk in Central Park next to the papers. It was a mirror to the polished glove Emily had discarded. The directors looked at it as though it were an artifact from a different epoch, one where justice still mattered. A hush fell before Calhoun. The bank's legal director cleared his throat. "Clause 17 is airtight, but the reputational and legal ramifications could bankrupt us if shareholders pursue class action suits." He tapped a pen nervously. Marcus sensed the wavering conviction. Prestige and profit had always drowned principled action in this industry. Then, an unexpected voice, Diane Morales, a newly appointed independent director with a background in ethical investing. "I propose we vote now. If we cannot uphold basic respect, then we have already lost our moral authority. Investors are no longer blind to injustice. Her words rippled through the room, the impromptu twist Marcus had orchestrated by securing her proxy vote this morning. Social responsibility was no longer a buzzword. It was a board-level mandate backed by public outrage and activist pressure. Emily Carter shuffled in late, her cheeks flushed. She clutched her pristine glove like a talisman. "This is an overreaction," she began, but Arthur raised a hand. "You saw the glove, Miss Carter. We also saw your Slack messages." He locked eyes with Marcus. "We stand by dignity." As the directors murmured assent, the gavel hovered above the contract's cover page, $5 billion shimmering in embossed letters. Layla rose, her gaze fierce yet composed. "Let's decide our legacy," she said, voice carrying the echoes of a movement. In that pregnant silence, every heartbeat felt like a drumroll. "If you think you've seen the last of me, think again," Marcus breathed under his mask of calm, stepping out of the boardroom as cameras snapped relentlessly. The hush of the marble foyer swallowed his words, yet they echoed in his mind like a vow. Moments ago, Metropolitan Trust's board had voted unanimously to cancel the $5 billion partnership and remove Emily Carter from her post, citing failure to uphold core values of respect and inclusion. That decision, fueled by the white glove on the mahogany table and the viral live stream of Marcus's ID card skidding across the tile, felt like both a triumph and a tremor, proof that justice could prevail, yet warning that complacency would undo it all. Marcus steadied himself on the cool stone railing overlooking the atrium. His reflection shimmered in the glass as city lights began to dance against Manhattan's dusk. Every inch of his 65 years told him this was just the beginning. Losing a multi-billion-dollar deal would devastate any bank, yet this institution had traded dignity for profit. Now, dignity would become its undoing. As whispers trailed behind him, some praising his courage, others whispering of lawsuits, he felt the familiar knot of strategy tighten in his chest. Justice was not a one-off act. It was a lifelong campaign. Layla emerged beside him, her tailored jacket speckled with city dust. She held out the paperweight, a miniature marble column Marcus had given her upon her first board appointment. "For standing tall," she said. Their eyes met, and the weight of empathy passed between them. The column and the white glove, one symbolizing structural integrity, the other the perversion of power, linked past and present in a wordless pact. Meanwhile, in the hushed corridors, Derek Nguyen confronted department heads with leaked screenshots from high standards and personal memos from Emily Carter. His risk of losing his job paled next to the risk he had taken for a just world. By sharing those messages, he forced Metropolitan Trust's leadership to reckon not just with one manager's bias, but with an entire culture that condoned silent discrimination. Out on the plaza, Sophia Lee's livestream views soared into the millions. As she narrated the board's verdict with fervor, she lifted the chipped ID card like a trophy, now encased in a protective frame that bore her hashtag, Respect First. In that frame, the card had transcended its material form. It was now a beacon challenging every organization to treat customers as human beings, not mere assets. But victory's glow can be deceptive. Marcus remembered the dozens of banks lining 42nd Street, each with its own lobby, its own unspoken hierarchy. Today's outcome might inspire change here, but tomorrow the cycle could repeat elsewhere. He clenched his fist, feeling the fabric of his Hugo Boss suit stretch, a reminder that beneath every tailored exterior lies flesh and bone, heart and history. He turned to Layla. "Our next fight starts at dawn," he said, voice low but resolute. As they walked toward the city's neon pulse, the fractured reflection of Marcus's ID card flickered once more in the glass. "Sometimes victory is just the calm before the next storm," Marcus muttered as the sunrise painted lower Manhattan in gold. He stood on the rooftop terrace of Layla's urban tech headquarters, feeling the city's heartbeat beneath his feet. Only a week had passed since Metropolitan Trust Bank's boardroom upheaval, yet the aftershocks rippled through every financial institution on 42nd Street. Today, a new contender emerged, Commonwealth National Bank. Layla joined him, holding a sleek folder embossed with Commonwealth's seal, a modern reinterpretation of the classical gavel symbolizing justice in finance. Inside lay an offer, a $5.2 billion partnership complete with preferential rates and equity stake for urban tech and binding clauses against discriminatory practices. Marcus traced his fingertip along the embossed seal, recalling how the white glove and marble column had shaped the last battle. Now this gavel promised a new era, one where integrity wasn't an afterthought, but the foundation. Yet Marcus's gut tightened. Accepting a better deal risked appearing mercenary. Rejecting it could stall urban tech's growth and disappoint thousands of underrepresented entrepreneurs banking on their mission. He remembered the broken promise of loans denied to his first construction firm in the 1980s, the nights he rebuilt hope from rubble. This moment felt eerily similar, an opportunity disguised as a test of principles. Layla sensed his hesitation. "We deserve to thrive, not just survive," she said softly, revealing a symbolic coin she'd carried since childhood, a keepsake from her grandmother's civil rights march. The coin's surface was worn, its engraving nearly illegible, yet it bore a portrait of Sojourner Truth. "We use her fight as our compass," Layla continued, eyes shining with conviction. Meanwhile, in Commonwealth's gleaming lobby, Marcus's longtime friend and the bank's president, Carlos Vega, greeted him with warmth. Carlos tapped a touchscreen display projecting Urban Tech's impact metrics loans, extended to minority founders, job creation in underserved communities, startups that transformed city blocks. "This is why we're here," Carlos said. "Your story is our story." He pointed to a digital mural of Sojourner Truth's face behind his desk, tying past struggles to future transformations. Back on the terrace, Marcus felt the weight of both proposals. Metropolitan Trust's downfall was not enough. He wanted systemic change. He envisioned a coalition of banks, fintechs, and social advocates united by transparent policies and enforceable anti-bias clauses, an industry-wide respect-first pact. That idea pulsed like a heartbeat beneath every decision. Layla placed the Sojourner Truth coin beside the gavel seal on his desk. "What if we leverage this partnership to launch the pact? Commonwealth leads, we co-author, others follow." Her plan carried risk, corporate boards resist constraints, and a public coalition challenged profit-first mentalities. But Marcus recognized the twist logic. The very institutions that once enforced silence could become champions of accountability if they saw collaboration as a path to sustainable profit and reputation. He inhaled deeply, feeling the city breeze ruffle his tie. At that moment, helicopters whirred overhead, news choppers sending live feeds of the Commonwealth announcement to every financial network. Social media lit up with "Juche Respect First Pact" and "Juche Urban Tech Commonwealth" tweets from executives, activists, even Metropolitan Trust insiders praising the initiative. Marcus looked at Layla, her face illuminated by sunrise and ambition. "Let's set the terms," he said, voice firm. "Not just for us, but for every entrepreneur who deserves respect at the first handshake." As they walked toward the boardroom, the gavel seal and the worn coin lay side by side, a symbol that today's partnership could ignite tomorrow's revolution. "Are you ready to burn every bridge that stands in our way?" Marcus asked, voice low, as the New York skyline glittered behind him. In the packed ballroom of the inaugural Respect First Summit, the air crackled with anticipation and tension. Hundreds of executives, fintech founders, civil rights advocates, and media personalities filled the room. At the head table, Commonwealth's gavel seal and the worn Sojourner Truth coin rested side-by-side, icons of a new pact designed to enforce respect at every handshake. But beneath the applause and camera flashes, Marcus could sense the undercurrent of resistance, entrenched profit-first mindsets raging like a hidden storm. Layla stood beside him, her posture unwavering as ever, but he caught a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Launching the Respect First Pact binding anti-discrimination clauses, transparent reporting, third-party audits was radical. Many attendees had signed on out of fear of public backlash, not conviction. If one bank backpedaled when profits dipped, the entire movement could collapse. Marcus clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of every entrepreneur whose future hinged on this moment. He stepped to the microphone, recalling his first rejection decades ago, when loan officers called his blueprints unrealistic. That memory fueled his resolve. Now injustice can only sustain itself in silence. Today, he began, his voice amplified but intimate. We stand at a crossroads. We can choose short-term gains by preserving the status quo, or we can choose enduring growth fueled by dignity, equity, and trust. As he spoke, a hush fell. The chandelier's crystals refracted his silhouette, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across the audience, fractured reflections echoing the broken promises of the past. He held up the Sojourner Truth coin, dimmed by age, but radiant under the spotlight. This coin reminds us that courage is timeless. Our pact honors that courage holds us accountable and propels us forward. Over the next hour, Layla unveiled the coalition's first initiative, a digital dashboard open to the public, tracking partner banks' lending practices by race, gender, and zip code. Data would be updated monthly, spotlighting disparities and rewarding institutions that met or exceeded benchmarks. A simple red, yellow, green system would turn corporate accountability into a living, breathing metric. The room buzzed. Activists cheered, reporters scribbled furiously, and a few executives exchanged uneasy glances. The twist logic Marcus relished was this: turning opaque biases into transparent statistics would render old excuses obsolete. Yet as the applause thundered, Marcus noticed Commonwealth's CFO, whispering with a major shareholder, making stern faces. Later in the champagne-scented reception, he overheard murmurs, "This will cannibalize our margins." What if competitors exploit our data? The summit's symbolic white glove centerpiece, now displayed in a glass case, seemed almost prophetic, a single discarded glove that ignited a revolution. But could that symbol withstand the ferocity of profit-driven pressure? Layla approached him, her smile taut. "They're already plotting to create a rival coalition, watered down, no teeth." She glanced at the digital dashboard streaming behind them, green for Commonwealth, yellow for a handful of banks teetering on commitment. "We need a contingency, someone to champion enforcement when the boardrooms balk." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The risk was escalating. A fractured pact could be worse than none at all. He patted her shoulder. "I know who we need." And in that moment, as the summit's lights dimmed and shadows lengthened, Marcus realized their next move would demand not just strategy, but sacrifice. "Do you really think you can hold them to your rules?" sneered Robert Hayes, leaning back in his leather chair as Marcus Johnson squared his shoulders across the desk. The skyline of New York flickered behind them, oblivious to this showdown between the coalition's founder and one of its fiercest skeptics. Hayes was the CEO of First National Bancorp, a bank with billions in assets and a reputation for playing by its own rules. His challenge wasn't personal, it was profit-driven. If First National bowed to the respect First Pact's transparency dashboard, its margins would shrink. If it didn't, the pact would look toothless. Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. This was the moment he'd anticipated, his values pitted directly against raw corporate power. He held in his palm the symbolic white glove from the summit, now encased in plexiglass, small holes drilled into its frame so it could breathe. That glove had once represented contempt. Now it was a daily reminder of what lay at stake. He allowed himself one breath, recalling the decades of rejection he'd endured as a young black entrepreneur. That memory was a furnace igniting his resolve. "Expect more than rules," Marcus replied evenly. "Expect accountability." He tapped his tablet, pulling up the live dashboard. First National's lending score was yellow, bordering on red. A single click revealed data loan approvals by Burroughs applicant demographics, turnaround times. Hayes's eyes flicked to the section where predominantly black zip codes showed a 40% lower approval rate. The numbers glowed like warning lights. Hayes steepled his fingers. "You'll destroy the discretion banks need to manage risk," he warned. "Regulators will come knocking." His tone was cold, authoritative. Marcus, however, sensed the twist logic crackling beneath Hayes's argument. The pact wouldn't remove discretion. It would illuminate abuses. Banks that served all communities fairly would be rewarded, drawing deposits and market share away from those that didn't. In this data-driven age, transparency translated to trust and profit. Out in the hallway, Layla Johnson watched through the glass. She had orchestrated this face-off, believing that Hayes's resistance would force other holdouts to reveal their hand. At her side, Derek Nguyen and Sophia Lee exchanged silent nods. Derek's voice had quietly mobilized First National's Ethics Committee to support Marcus, while Sophia's social media influence had rallied public sentiment. Their roles, unsung heroes, had tipped the scale. Inside the office, Hayes leaned in. "Fine, you win for now. But when the quarterly report shows our numbers skewed, you'll be the one blamed." He slid a sleek business card across the desk, Robert Hayes, First National Bancorp. Marcus took it, feeling the glossy weight and invitation to future battles. "Then prepare to share the credit when we fix it," Marcus said, eyes unwavering. "We'll work with you on targeted community outreach live workshops for loan officers and an independent ombudsman overseeing appeals. This isn't punishment, it's partnership." He placed the card atop the white glove case, the juxtaposition stark Hayes' name resting on a symbol of past contempt, now reclaimed as a beacon for change. Hayes exhaled sharply, rising from his chair. "You're dangerously idealistic." He paused at the door. "We'll see how long that lasts in this market." Then he was gone, leaving Marcus alone with the glove, the dashboard, and a silence heavy with expectation. As the door clicked shut, Marcus breathed deeply. The coalition had survived its greatest threat, but the real test was just beginning, turning data into deeds, pledges into practice. He tapped a message to Layla Phase 2 and hit send. The skyline flickered again, lights winking like stars, silent witnesses to a fight defined not by blood or bullets, but by principles, numbers, and the enduring power of dignity. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought within, Marcus whispered, staring at the framed white glove hanging in the Urban Tech boardroom's foyer. It had been 8 months since that fateful morning at Metropolitan Trust, and the glove, once an insult, had become a monument to resilience. He traced its tattered cuff with his eyes before turning to face the dozen new coalition members gathered around the oval table. Their expressions ranged from hopeful to haunted. Each had stepped into the ring of accountability at the risk of stock prices, promotions, and reputations. Layla stood beside him, holding the Sojourner Truth coin in one hand and tapping the glowing Respect First dashboard with the other. "We've tracked over 2 million loan applications since launch," she announced, voice steady but charged with emotion. "Approval rates in historically marginalized zip codes have jumped from 55% to 78%, and default rates remain on par with city averages. Investors are finally seeing compassion pays." A ripple of applause echoed, tempered by the weight of what lay ahead, sustaining these gains against inevitable backlash. Marcus felt a surge of pride and fear. Behind him, a video looped silently across a giant screen, skyscrapers illuminated by Afresh Respect First projections, community centers funded by Urban Tech's microloans, families stepping across new thresholds of opportunity. The image was intoxicating, yet he knew that any moment a sharp gust of profit-driven wind could blow this movement off course. He cleared his throat, recalling Robert Hayes' parting words. "We'll see how long that lasts in this market." He stepped forward. "Today we face our greatest test, expanding this pact globally." His voice echoed. "If our message is confined to Manhattan, or even the United States, systemic bias will simply migrate elsewhere. We must adapt our terms to international financial cultures, from the branch managers in Johannesburg to mobile lenders in Sao Paulo." The room leaned in. Global scale meant exponential complexity, and risk, legal, cultural, logistical. Derek Nguyen raised a hand. "We've piloted the dashboard API with 3 microfinance banks in India, and compliance jumped 40%, but local regulators balked at publishing racial data. That tension between transparency and privacy, between universal ideals and local norms, hung heavy." Sophia Lee live streaming to her 2.5 million followers panned her camera across the boardroom. "Moment of truth, will they stand by their principles beyond U.S. borders?" Comments sped by. "Global respect first. Now or never." Marcus inhaled deeply. He pictured the construction sites of his youth, blueprints, faded hard hats, scarred where every beam laid was a risk and a promise. That memory, sealed beneath his CEO ID and worn into his bones, lent him courage. "We'll write adaptable frameworks," he said, "allowing local dashboards to respect privacy laws while maintaining core metrics, equitable access, unbiased underwriting community reinvestment. It was a twist logic embracing nuance without diluting accountability. Layla tapped the screen, highlighting a prototype interface with customizable metrics and anonymized data filters. Open source, she added. Let every community code their own respect-first standards. A beat of silence followed, then cheers. Yet somewhere in that applause, Marcus sensed the beginning of another storm. Political pressures, economic downturns, new executives who might treat the glove as a relic rather than a warning. He turned to Layla, offering her the Sojourner Truth coin. "The real work starts now," he said, voice soft yet unwavering. "Because respect isn't a campaign, it's a commitment." As the room erupted in renewed resolve, the camera lingered on the white glove's frayed edges, the final image of Segment 8 before the next chapter of this revolution would begin.